Hello everybody, I'm coming back at this engine overhaul and last year's expenses from a different angle today, and I got a lot of comments on the last update I did as far as the total cost for 2023, as far as what it cost for the aircraft. So I had a lot of people asking questions and commenting on the engine overhaul slash upgrades. I have quoted as $115,426. And I had a lot of people asking, where did that come from? And you should have been able to get your engine overhauled a lot cheaper than that. And I just want to go back and address some of that. So I apologize because I did post an update halfway through last year whenever I was going through the engine upgrade process and the frustration that I was having waiting on parts and all the other stuff. And I went into more detail on what my upgrades were. Outside of just the engine overhaul. So one of the things, and this is the whole purpose of me going over all this, is because it's such a mystery. And I've watched, even today, I've watched other videos. There's guys out there that are doing how to buy your perfect airplane and all this, and they're talking about it, and they mean well, and I'm not here to knock any of them. However, they leave a lot of gray area out there, and that's the problem with the whole industry, in my opinion, is if you ask somebody, hey, I'm looking to do my engine overhaul, what should I be budgeting for? You're going to hear somewhere between $35,000 and $40,000, roughly, right? Give or take. And so, and that is true. So what I did is I have this file. This is everything that I have spent money on. I keep very close track, keep very good records on what I'm spending the money on, because I am trying to track this, especially to try to, for my own benefit, and then maybe help someone else along the way that's looking at doing it. So if you take the engine, just the engine, and you overhaul the engine, I sent my engine case to Central Cylinders. They overhauled the case for $1,555.30. I sent the crankshaft. The cam was bad. So they refurbished all that to Aircraft Specialties. They also did the rods, rocker arms, starter unit, bearing set, crankshaft dowel. That grand total was $9,600, $9,609.24. And so when you figure that in with the I'm sorry, that was the wrong number. I apologize. We might have to edit some of this, but that was $5,788.73. I have so many receipts in here. I was trying to keep track, kind of part these out. Then, so just as a recap, going back, Central Cylinders did the engine case overhaul for $1,555.30. I sent out to Aircraft Specialties the other parts that I just went over, the camshaft, the crankshaft, all that good stuff, $5,788.73. And then I bought another set of cylinders, which was $9,609.24, brand new Superior cylinders. So the grand total, you could have the engine without labor, without gaskets and bolts and screws, for $17,609.19. That's just the raw, quick, just pure engine, $17,600, $17,609. Now you're gonna have to add labor to that, and then you're gonna have to buy your parts and screws and things. And I have in here Aircraft Specialties, Aircraft Spruce rather. I have a stack of, and I'll tell you what, bolts and nuts and gaskets and screws, they add up quickly. So you're gonna have a couple $1,000s in that, in doing that. So that's if you look at that and say, well, yeah, that would be pretty reasonable. You can come in with labor for under right around $30,000. You could have an engine overhauled, and 0470 overhauled. End of story, right? Well, the bottom line is, if that's where you wanted to do, and you just wanted to budget overhaul your engine, yes, technically you're correct. That is what you can spend on it. But I ended up going and saying, well, for me, there was a lot more upgrades to just the engine. But when just focusing on the engine here for a minute, I didn't want to put my old spark plug wires back on. I didn't want to put my old gamies back in there without having them worked on, tested, overhauled, and recalibrated. I didn't want to put on my old prop governor. I didn't want to use the old fuel lines and fuel system. So I had the manifolds overhauled, the fuel pump overhauled, the meter valve checked. And then, there's a few electrical things. And so that all added up. Just in the fuel overhaul system, just the manifold, I sent out to D&G, $1,625. The prop governor was $1,927 to have it done. I put new magnetos on it, $3,200, because you don't want to put old mags back on it. At least I didn't want to. The gammy overhaul was $270. So this is where, and this is all part of the engine still. It's not upgrades. This is just the engine looking at, okay, if you're going to overhaul it, do you put old stuff back on? Do you put your old alternator back on? Do you have it overhauled, checked? I chose to do the other side, which I flew it to Alaska and 3,100 nautical miles around there, and then 3,100 nautical miles back. And I did have a few squawks when I came back, but I think I had a lot less squawks than if I were strapping old equipment on top of a freshly overhauled engine. And so that was the reason I chose to go the other direction with that. And so when you start adding that in, now your engine overhaul, okay, gets to be, $50,000, $60,000 really quickly with labor and parts with all that. So that's where it's a great, and you have to, that's why I'm trying to be open and transparent with you guys and just say, hey, yeah, you can rebuild an engine for $35,000, $40,000. That is true. However, is it really realistic? If you're in and you want to just do a budget overhaul, sure, it's realistic. That's fine if that's your choice. I don't want to do that. The most aggravating thing for me is when I spend that kind of money on something and cheap out on a mag, and the mag fails when I'm halfway to Alaska or I'm out with my family doing something else. That just causes me more aggravation and stress when I've actually just paid for the mags, when I had the thing overhauled, and called it good. So that's why I chose to go the longer direction. And so if you think like I do, and I think whenever you're doing research on costs and airplane ownership and things like that, you need to find someone who thinks like you. Because I've seen guys run things on very, very strict budgets, and you know what? They seem to fly a lot. And they do have problems and they do have issues, but that doesn't seem to bother them. They don't seem to get aggravated or stressed out. Now I will grant a lot of them that I know personally, they're not flying cross country 3,100 nautical miles. So that might be some of it too. If you're just flying around the patch and you enjoy just bombing around short distances, and your mechanic can drive over to the airport you get stranded at because your mag fails, then fine. Or if you don't have a problem doing that and it's a disruption, you can jump in a rental car and drive back home. Whatever, I guess, I'm not that way, and I don't want to be that way. I would rather just pay the price, get it over with, and move on. So if you think like I do, then your overhaul is going to be more than the $40,000 that you read online and you see other people talking about, and you read in the comments and people brag about their overhaul being $35,000, $40,000, and anyone who spends more than that is a lunatic. That's why you get that disparity. So as far as upgrades, how did I get to the 115? Well, I put a new MT prop on it. I put Zeiss fuel gauges in it. I upgraded the Aspen to the Pro Max. I put a new windshield, one-piece windshield. The top of my windshield was crazy. I put a PowerFlow exhaust system on it because the PowerFlow, or my old exhaust system, was in beat-up shape. The shroud was all just, over the years had just been cobbled together. So I ended up going to the PowerFlow, which is a nice exhaust system, which is a premium exhaust. I could have went cheaper on that. I put a Tannis engine heater in there. I put a new engine. That's the other thing, engine baffling. Just to put baffling around the engine, it was a couple $1,000s by the time you bought the kit for that. I had the tail wheel, the tail AD addressed, and then I also rebuilt the tail wheel. The bushings inside the tail wheel were loose. And then the cowling flaps, we had to rebuild the bottom part of the cowling, the internal part of the cowling. It was just beat to pieces, and the cowl flaps were cracked and broken and just hanging on by a thread. So we ended up repairing that as well. Those were the upgrades, and I'm sure I'm missing some of the few things, but that's how I got to the 115 from a $30,000 or $35,000 engine overhaul to $115,000. So it's the whole journey, and that's what I was trying to go over in that last video, is talk about the whole journey. This file is the whole journey of 2023 and what I spent on that aircraft. So, but again, can you do it cheaper? 1,000% you can do it cheaper. I am not, please don't misunderstand, my purpose of these videos is not to say, well, you know, it's too expensive and everyone should run from an airplane. That's not my purpose. The purpose is to be realistic and say, hey, if you buy an old aircraft and you want to keep it up to par, that you can jump into it. And I mean, whenever I'm done, whenever this airplane is flying, I'm gonna jump in it and fly. I plan on going to Seattle and then going down the coast of California and then coming back across the southern end. So I'm gonna hit Johnson Creek and all the other places out in Idaho. So I'm gonna make big, long cross country again this year. And I'll do it with the confidence, believing and knowing that I spent the money, I did the preventative maintenance that I felt like I needed to do to make sure I have a predictable, dependable, reliable aircraft that I could fly cross country. All right. Hopefully that helps a little bit, because I know a lot of guys are confused, and when you go online and you Google how much does it cost to overhaul an IO 470, you're going to see that $30,000-$40,000. I've Googled it myself. I've seen it myself. I did the research myself before I ever did the overhaul. However, when you get into things, that's Pandora's box. So it's your choice, and it was my choice, obviously, to say, well, do I do a budget rebuild, or do I just go ahead and finish this thing out? And I've chosen to finish that out. So anyways, I hope that helps and kind of explains things. One final thought is when you're if you're looking to purchase an airplane, my advice would be, and I've heard this before, and I never really thought about it that much until now that I'm into this, is you know, why is the person selling the aircraft, and what was the personality of the person selling the aircraft? And when you go to a broker, it's hard to get that. Sometimes it takes time. You know, the longer you own an airplane, the more you understand the personality of the previous owner, just by looking at things in a lot more detail. Unfortunately, I did not have that experience. I was not. You know, you guys, if you watch this video much or watch this channel much, you'll see that I bought the airplane without a pre-buy. I bought it right in the middle of the pandemic, and airplanes were moving so fast that it was ridiculous, and I just jumped on one and said, well, I'm going to go with it. And yeah, I paid the price for it. So, but the bottom line is, if you could really understand the personality of the previous owner. My advice would be, and I'm not saying anything against brokers or anything like that, but if you could have a conversation with the previous owner, if you buy it directly from him, it doesn't take very long to see the pride of ownership show through. So as soon as you start talking to an aircraft owner and he starts explaining his thought process, his preventative maintenance process, and how he thinks, man, you can learn a ton whether that aircraft is going to be properly maintained or not. So, you know, we all get excited when we see nice paint and you know, that nice ramp appearance, but there's so much more obviously to that than, you know, as far as the ownership cost in the future, if you buy something that just has a nice glamorous ramp appearance versus something that's really truly been maintained. I'm actually learning more and more of that the longer I own this airplane. So the frustrating part is, about the time I get it all done, that's when I want to move on to a different airplane. But that's another story for another day. But anyways, okay, yes, you can overhaul an engine. Very reasonable. And I say reasonable in airplane terms, and I think $35,000, $40,000. I totally get that. I totally understand that. However, there's another side of that. So just be mindful of that. And maybe I should go into more detail. I could break down every receipt. I could, you know, really go into, if you guys are really interested and someone's really concerned about pulling the trigger on an airplane that needs an overhaul and they really want to understand my personal cost, if you send me an email, I will be happy to call you and talk with you as long as we need to on the phone. I can go over every little detail that I learned and all the little I gotchas that I didn't think about whenever I first stepped into the overhaul process. So, okay. Until next time, fly safe. And I'm working on the Alaska edit still, so that should be the next video out. I'm going to break that in two parts, I think. So the first part will be getting up there in the hunt, and then the second part's getting it back home. So, all right. So stay tuned for that. All right. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.